We're going to take a look at Hood in here on the weekly chart. We are down on the day around 13%, basically down $11 from yesterday's close. We're sitting in that $71 range currently. We're going to see if this holds or we're going to keep on coming down going into tomorrow's trading session. Obviously, with earnings, this thing kind of came down, but IV in here is still relatively elevated. So even though we did get that crush in here, IV is still elevated compared to itself in here. IV rank sitting at 42. It now looks like options traders are still pricing in right around a $3 expected move by this Friday. So decent move here on a 70 something dollar stock. Where does that kind of put us here on this weekly chart? Well, our first resistance up here is going to be this 9-day EMA. That's kind of our main resistance we're looking at in here, $78 range. To the upside above there, we are going to be looking at that 93, and then above that 97, and then that $100 psych level. To the downside in here, it's basically we're sitting kind of right on that 71 right now. So that could technically be a support in here, but anything below there, we're liking this 66, $67 range better. And then obviously the 65 range as well. It's kind of all in there. You can kind of chalk it up to about a $2 channel, 65 to that $67 channel in there. That's going to be your main support. But anything outside of there, it's looking like nothing until you get down here to those 56s. Now, your RSI in here is still relatively oversold. I mean, you're basically more neutral now than what you were in here about a month ago, but you're sitting at 39. So it's coming back down a little bit, obviously, with this big red candle in here so far on the week. So we're going to see what happens in here throughout the rest of the week, see if we can't get a little bit of a recovery in here, perhaps through this 9-day EMA, and then let things kind of shake out from there. But again, we'll have to wait and see what happens, how Hood's going to correlate with the overall market, because we know that this is a high beta stock. So obviously, any move that you get in your overall markets, you are going to get basically a 3 times move out of Hood compared to the overall market. So we do have to kind of keep that in mind as we're looking here, but that's just because of the earnings and the IV that we just had in here. Obviously, that beta is going to change depending on how the stock kind of moves and recovers from the big down move that we just had in here. So again, we're going to wait and see what happens in here. Hood's down $11 basically from yesterday's close. So let's see how we react in here to the rest of the week. Now, we're also going to take a look at ticker symbol ASTS in here. Now, we readjusted our overall structure on our weekly chart in here because we did have a nice clean breakout to the downside in here of our overall trend line. So we readjusted in here. I actually kind of like this support better because we have multiple touch points here coming back from November. And then obviously that low that we had in here last week, that is now one of our touch points. But overall, it doesn't really matter because we're still outside of that. So even though we are very outside of the move that we had in here last week, to the downside in here, our previous structure, this structure, we are still down. So what are we looking at in here overall on this weekly chart? Well, we're going to see if we're going to close out of this overall trend line right here, this yellow trend line, or we're going to close back in it. That's number one. To the second thing we have to worry about is going to be this 50-day SMA right here, sitting at 67. Anything outside of there, we're going to be looking down here at this $62 level. To the upside in here, obviously, that first major trend line that we just mentioned, $74. That's what we're looking at in here. A nice close above that would be helpful as we go into next week, but I kind of have to wait and see what happens in here. But anything outside of there, we are going to be looking at this 9-day EMA or that 80-85, whichever one of these do come first. Now, your IV in here is sitting at a $38 IV rank in here. So that gives us about a $4 expected move. So again, pretty decent move in here, about a $70 stock. So you're getting $3 to $4 moves in both of these stocks that we're just mentioning right now. So a lot of IV in here. Next Friday, right around an $8 expected move. And then our May monthlies, right around a $12 expected move being priced in by your options trader. We do have May 11th earnings coming up in here. So as we start to ramp up towards that earnings report and we get closer, we're going to watch our IV and then we're going to keep track of our overall implied volatility, intraday implied volatility compared to the stock price. And we're also going to compare, keep in track of the overall markets and the VIX and how that is going to correlate to this. So there's a couple things that we have to kind of be aware of in here. But first things first, let's see if we can close above this lower trend line going into the end of the weekend here. If not, then we're going to play this thing accordingly. So that's what we're looking at here in Hood and in AST Mobile. All right, guys, if you like this video, make sure to check us out on all of our social media. We also have a Discord service if you are interested, and you can find all of our socials in the description below.